So we are supposedly getting ready to stream. Let's see. We are live on YouTube. Yay. Welcome, welcome everyone. Once again, we are here with The Doctors Are In. Thank you for joining us on this third Thursday of the month, where we are here to serve you. And we are here to answer any questions, any concerns, any thoughts, any ideas that you may have pertaining to health and wellness. In any way, if we can be of service, let us know. You can always feel free to reach out to me behind the scenes. You know, if you're shy and you don't want anybody to know that you're asking a question, and we're going to have one of those questions like that tonight, you can always email them to me at sankofahe@gmail.com or ITAB, or It Takes a Village ministry.org@gmail.com. That being said, I want to once again welcome our phenomenal Dr. Kelly Sutton. Thank you for joining us. And I want to lead with Dr. Sutton. I want to give her an opportunity to give us an update on what's happening with her world in terms of court cases. Because please keep in mind, ladies and gents, that there is a significant battle in the world that we live in today to prevent doctors from being doctors. So it's very important that you make yourself aware of what's happening, that you not put your head in the sand and think that everything is okay just because they gave you permission to take the mask off on the airlines and you think that it's over, but it's not, let me tell you. So if you can update us, Dr. Sutton.
So I'm sending an appeal to unrevoke my license that has to be submitted tomorrow to the Superior Court in Sacramento. And this is all happening with volunteer work. So it's a mother attorney who's incredibly devoted and balancing this with her other life of taking care of her child and chauffeuring and all those things. So it's amazing what we're accomplishing, but it's really learning as we go because this is not her specialty. And yet she's come up with insights that that attorneys who are specialists in medical board cases have not seen. Wow. And she is amazed at what she looks at and says, the doctors writing exemptions have been treated like second-class citizens. So it's a fight that has to be fought. And I don't know there's any other way to do it than just go through all the jots and tittles that the legal system requires and hope that we get a judge who's objective and fair, which we did the last time we had something to bring to the court. And the judge did give a stay of revocation about a month ago and said the board had to re-review the petition that I wrote to not have my license revoked. And the board reviewed it, but they re-revoked the license anyhow. So now we're going to a higher court. Everything in the medical board level is administrative. So we're going up to Superior Court. And it seems to be there is more objectivity when you get into the higher levels of the judiciary.
Yes.
So thank you for your support.
Now, if you can just give us a little background, because, you know, when I hear that a medical doctor's license has been revoked, I'm here thinking, okay, you kill like 50 people, or you're a drug addict or something of that nature. So what is the dastardly deed that you committed? What's the crime that you committed that has you in medical jail? Let's put it
yes,
that.
Of the worst kind, solitary confinement.
Yes.
There's no greater discipline than to have your license revoked. And after 50 years with no complaints, no malpractice judgments against me,
wow.
All of a sudden, out of the blue, I was, a complaint came toward me for having written medical exemptions for children to not receive their childhood vaccines. So I was accused of incompetence, unprofessional conduct, negligence, and gross negligence, and repeated acts of negligence. So that came to the administrative judge hearing, and the standards applied were not the standards in the law that was in force at the time that I wrote the exemptions. They were the standards that were applied by a later law. So it's like ex post facto, or one of those words that means after the fact, you're in trouble. And that's never been brought up in the discussions in the other cases like myself. But every single doctor like myself who has written medical exemptions from vaccines for the childhood vaccines has been disciplined. None of us are not disciplined. If we're investigated, we're done for. And most of the doctors have to settle, which means admitting guilt, having extra course requirements that are not cheap, being monitored and put on probation, and that monitor costs maybe $20,000 a year, and the doctor carries the cost of that. Having their practice limited, they cannot talk about vaccines, and they have to inform every patient that comes in that they can't say things about vaccines, and they have to keep a log of that. Some of the doctors are required to have physical exam for health, some clinical competency evaluation that they also pay for. So it's a huge challenge to your livelihood. And the choice is either I have no license, so no livelihood, or I take this very burdensome, very restricted. And the doctor also cannot supervise nurse practitioners or physician's assistants. So it's a very big shrinkage of income sources that's punitive. And even though the medical board website says the purpose is to rehabilitate physicians, not to punish, what's happening to my group of physicians is punishment. Yeah. And I think I would like to read some of the cases of doctors who did have sexual charges, drug charges, cut off the wrong leg, do damage in surgery, and see how it sounds in comparison to how ours sound. Because I would imagine that even though there's no harm from not giving the childhood vaccines that has happened, there's no community outbreaks, there's no deaths from chickenpox or measles, I bet the language is identical. And I haven't seen that yet, but I'm very curious about it.
Now, could you tell us a little bit more about what kind of children would you have deemed in the past in need of an exemption? Because, you know, people think that all of these people who are getting medical exemption is just because, you know, they woke up one morning and they just don't feel like it or whatever it is. But I don't think they necessarily have an understanding that when we say medical exemption, there's something behind it. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So before this law passed in California, there were very few medical exemptions written because the parents made the judgment. My child has allergies. My family's had bad vaccine reactions. A sibling regressed after a vaccine. I don't want to vaccinate the other family members. So that was handled by personal belief exemptions and religious exemptions. Mm-hmm. So when 277 passed in 2015, the only type of exemption that was formally acknowledged was the medical exemption. So people started to come to doctors and say, this is what my thinking is, and I can't do it anymore. Will you do it for me? So I started looking in what's in the literature. There's information about the increased number of allergies and eczema, asthma from children who are vaccinated in comparison with those who are not vaccinated. There's also neurologic issues, and mitochondrial dysfunction plays in there. And 30% of children who have autism and regress are having mitochondrial dysfunction, but that is not on the list of allowed conditions to exempt for. And the other thing is autoimmune disease. So those are the three big areas that I looked out for: neurologic, allergic, and autoimmune. And the question comes whether a person should have protection before the damage happens or only if they have been damaged. The current status, the advisory Committee on Immunization Practices says you can have a vaccine exemption if you have had anaphylaxis to a vaccine, and then you are exempt from taking that single vaccine, but not any other vaccines. You still have to take those. So it's a whole different mindset to say a person who goes through anaphylaxis to one vaccine is not the same person as that person was before the anaphylaxis. Their system has almost died and come back.
Yeah.
There are commonalities in the vaccines that would make us be cautious with other vaccines as well, because every vaccine has a final common pathway of stimulating the immune system. If an immune system is already inflamed, then it doesn't make sense to overstimulate it and magnify the other inflammation that's already there, such as the allergic problems or the neurologic problems. So there's more reasons to be cautious. And this is what parents observe, tell their doctors, and sometimes are just said there's no connection. It's all coincidence. The fact that we now have 54% of children with a chronic disease, whereas in the late 80s, it was 12%, is coincidence. So we do live in a time of toxins. There's other things besides vaccines, but vaccines are a major contributing factor because we're not injecting other toxins into our body directly for the most part.
Exactly.
Getting toxins into the bloodstream is primarily done through vaccination.
And, you know, it's something that we're not addressing as a society in general. As you said, the significant increase, not only in terms of chronic illnesses, but specifically as they relate to illnesses that correlate to dysregulation in the immune system. So whether it be things like eczema or asthma, you know, things of that nature, where we have to start paying attention to these signs. It's not just, oh, Johnny has a runny nose when it comes to the seasonal allergies. It's a matter of the fact that once you have a breakdown in one area of the immune system, one of the barriers of the immune system, then all the other barriers, the other two barriers, are likely to fall also. So now we have practically every kid out there has some kind of food sensitivity. You know, we have 50 million peanut allergies where you can't even bring a peanut butter bar into the school with you anymore without people, you know, trying to think that you're trying to kill off this population of kids. Right. And we're not paying attention to that. And, you know, it seems that as if we have thrown out the whole adage of an ounce of prevention. And, you know, you look at some of these medication commercials, and I always laugh to myself when they get to the point where they say, do not take this if you have an allergy to. How would you know if you have an allergy to it if you haven't taken it? So maybe we shouldn't be taking it at all, because who knows what it's going to trigger. And now what we see with this significant increase in the schedule, you know, back when I was a kid, you know, maybe I had 12 shots or something of that nature. I don't know. I would have to check with my mom. But at this point, we're at to what, 74, 75? And now they're talking about adding COVID. And it's not even like they're talking about one COVID shot. They're talking about a booster every 4 to 6 months. And what we're looking at is this significant overstimulation of the immune system, where we're going to get to the point where you're going to have to be on 50 medications just to live your daily life, because you have so compromised your basic innate immune system that it no longer works anymore. And we're not paying attention to that, unfortunately. Dr. Sutton?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're dealing with. And I think there's times when it's also immune suppressive, as well as overstimulatory. So it's a whole big ball of wax that we're doing broadly on our vulnerable populations that we don't understand, and yet we're still doing it. Because vaccines have this unique position of all the products that are, of having manufacturers without liability. Yeah. They alone can put out a product, test it for 5 days for the hepatitis B vaccine, 42 days for some other vaccines, and get it approved. And it's on the schedule. And once it's on the schedule, there's hardly any questioning. It just automatically goes into all the state laws and requirements. And California is a little bit leading the way to make it a mandate with no exceptions. The religious exemption has not been specifically outlawed in California statute. It's not written that there's no religious exemption, but there's such a dominant mindset that there is only a medical exemption that when the word personal beliefs exemption was removed, was stated, people assumed it also was the religious exemption. And it kind of goes along with what's going on in the world today that just says, religion, what's that? That doesn't matter. It's not real. Whatever creation was, we're going to undo it and do it our way. And it's part of the same thing. So every human being on earth has a big job right now, one way or another, whether it's as a parent or in the work that they're doing, or as a member of a country speaking up and not just accepting what's going on.
Could I ask a quick question?
Sure.
This is Lori. Do you know how many doctors specifically in California have been revoked on this issue?
I only know of 2 revocations, but everyone else has had settlements. They either get a reprimand or a probation of different length. It could be 3 years, 5 years. Somebody said they're increasing it to 7. So the revocations are extreme, but the discipline is universal.
Okay, so there've been a number disciplined. And the people on the medical board, I'm assuming there are no integrative doctors, no nutritional doctors, right?
Right.
Okay. What a scene. So crazy.
Well, I want to say thank you, Dr. Sutton, for standing your ground and not negotiating with terrorists. I don't know the circumstances of other people who have compromised and struck a deal or whatever, but I am so grateful to you for making that sacrifice and saying, you know what, I'm not going to make a deal with the devil. I'm not going to compromise. I'm not going to negotiate on what I know to be truth. So few people are in that space with you today. And on behalf of many, many people, I just want to say thank you so very much for standing in the gap and protecting our children.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Same here. Same message.
Thank you. It's easier at my age than if I was 30 years younger and I still had kids and family,
bills to pay.
Yeah. All of that on the shoulders of people in their middle years. So I think we just do what is in front of us and it's all going to work together eventually. I hope sooner than later.
Absolutely.
And you know, that I think that is one of the biggest areas that is interesting to me, that, you know, we have been fighting against vaccines. Well, I'll say I, because I can't make assumptions about anyone else. I've been fighting, and I'm a true anti-vaxxer. I have no problems embracing that particular label because I have not vaccinated any of my children. I don't even vaccinate my dog, you know, because number one, I don't believe they're safe. I don't believe they're effective. And most importantly, I don't believe they're necessary, but that's another issue. So the thing that I find interesting is that most parents don't even blink at it when they take their children in and the doctor says, yeah, here's blah, blah, vaccines for this month or whatever. It is just now that we have been debating in the national arena about COVID that now people are saying, maybe we shouldn't just go along with the program. And I think it's ironic because, you know, the reality is that the most vulnerable, as you were saying, Dr. Sutton, are the children. Because when a child has an adverse reaction, they don't have the words to say what's going on. They don't have the cognitive ability to process it. And so there's so much happening to little itty bitty babies that, you know, after they get the shot, they're screaming and yelling at the top of their lungs. And the medical profession, not saying you, but the medical profession in general will say, oh, that's just a common side effect. Don't worry about it. It'll go, it'll pass. But do we have any idea of what is happening inside of that little baby on the level, as you were saying, of the mitochondria, where the cells are practically on fire, they're screaming, and the amount of pain that that child may be in, not from simply a needle prick, but from what is happening on a cellular level with the inflammation and all of those things. And it just amazes me that we as adults have given up the main responsibility that has been handed down from generation to generation from God Almighty, which is to protect the children at all costs. You know, as you said, we're old, we're getting older, we got gray hair, you know, some of us can't walk, whatever, teeth missing, but never before have we sacrificed the children. Never before have we said, no problem, do whatever you want to do to the kids, it's okay. But now that you're talking about me, now I'm upset. Now I'm going to go out there and do this and do that. So I'm praying that in all of this interesting adventure, that we start to circle back to the beginning. And the beginning is the reality that we're talking about one shot for adults. But if we stand back and look at this, we're talking about 75 plus shots that are being zapping our children from a couple of days old.
Within 24 hours of birth.
Know.
Yeah. And that shot is designed to prevent the hepatitis B that is bloodborne and from sexual promiscuity, which no baby is engaged in. So there's no reasonable situation that should be required at birth, except in people of Asian extract who have active hepatitis B, and then it's worthwhile because that ethnic group is vulnerable to liver cancer if you have hepatitis B. But instead, every newborn gets it in this country, and it's we send as a model to lead the world. I think there's always been a stream of evil that damaged children. I don't think that's the new thing in our time, but it's getting more widespread and where we have to look at it as a whole. And someone said that the last wave of vaccine catastrophe was the autistic kids who couldn't defend themselves verbally, just as you said, Michelle. And now the people with COVID vaccine reactions are adults as well, and they can defend themselves verbally. So whether it's going to make a difference or not, I don't know. But we're up against enormous forces, and they're showing up in other parts of our lives as well. And the most important thing we can do is find each other and support each other to help create a parallel option in our world so that we are not just all in the same cattle chute that gets identical education and medicine and government handling and taxation, so that we're all trapped.
Yeah. Now, in alignment with what you were saying in terms of hepatitis B, kind of making a little segue, we had two questions that came in. One question was, how would you address dealing with herpes? So I'm going to throw that to you first, Dr. Sutton.
Which kind of herpes? The herpes?
No, simplex? Not the herpes simplex, the sexual herpes.
Okay, so there's herpes simplex and herpes zoster. The herpes zoster is chickenpox. The herpes simplex can either be type 1, which is in the mouth and face area, and type 2, which is genital. That's a chronic infection of the nerve that is brought out by stress and sometimes related to shifts in hormones. People use L-lysine as a preventive. That is because the herpes virus likes the amino acid arginine, and lysine and arginine are like on a teeter-totter. So when one goes up, the other goes down. So if you increase the lysine, you lower the arginine and starve the virus. There's also homeopathic remedies. I like Echinacea argentum that Uriel Pharmacy makes that's good for any chronic viral infection. And a person really needs to understand stress as best they can. And if there's anything about their inflammation pathways, such as they don't handle vitamin D properly or vitamin A, and get those things straightened out. It can be horrible, some of the herpes type 2, very persistent in people. And I think that deserves a deeper dive into that person's maybe genetic makeup and their nutrition and lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, with this person, there was no, they said that they don't have any information regarding their genetic makeup because they're adopted. And what I stress in dealing with herpes and other similar type of viral situations, as you said, is looking at minimizing the triggers, especially in terms of stress. And because this is a male, one of the challenges in dealing with men is that they will have this bravado of saying, oh, nothing bothers me, I'm just fine, blah, 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 blah. And it takes a little while to become much more aware, to pull yourself out of your circumstances and to really allow yourself to be aware of when you notice yourself being triggered in the slightest manner. Men tend not to have the same emotionality externally as women do, but I do believe that men tend to internalize their feelings more. And whether or not you express those feelings outwardly, or you allow them to go inward and fester or accumulate like a frog in the boiling pot of water, they have the same effect in terms of lowering the immune capability of the body to rebound from any kind of incursions. So people with this particular virus, it will stay dormant and you'd think, oh, I'm over it, no problem, yay, whoopee. And then as soon as you get into an interesting situation, say, fighting with a spouse or a child, one of your kids drive you crazy, all of a sudden, quote unquote, the virus will flare up because of the fact that you have compromised your immune system through not dealing with how you approach stress in a healthy manner. So when you don't deal with stressors in an appropriate, or should I say a healthy manner, then it will draw from your being various critical minerals such as magnesium, that would, and zinc, that would help to regulate your system and strengthen and fortify your immune system. And the same thing with your vitamin D levels. That helps you with inflammation. If you are in the middle of dealing with a lot of various stressors, emotional stressors, mental stressors in your life, your immune system is being overactive in terms of dealing with what it perceives to be a threat. And so those are the people who
I'm going to say goodbye. You're on the right track. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Sutton.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
So in those situations, you want to definitely identify what are the key elements that you may be deficient in as it pertains to fortifying your immune system, whether it be zinc or vitamin D or vitamin A or magnesium, or like Dr. Sutton was saying, various amino acids that are key to different enzymatic systems, such as the L-lysine. So definitely realize that dealing with viral incursions is not simply a matter of quote unquote antivirals. It's a matter of recognizing that the immune system is part of the whole being, and it's integrated with your digestive system, with your hormonal system, with all the other systems in the body, and cannot be isolated in that manner. So that's just a thought, okay? Any other questions or thoughts, Lori?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Two things. Ran into a situation and just wanted to ask you about it, the healthcare system in California and the public health healthcare system. I have a friend who goes to the county hospital, and one of the things that they pretty chronically and constantly do, if you go for pretty much any kind of ailment, they will immediately start screening you for, are you depressed? Oh, you must need an antidepressant because it must depress you to have a problem with your back, or these type of things. To me, this is very strange. Like, it isn't like somebody is saying, oh, your knee is bad. Well, maybe you need a certain type of a knee pad. And we have these really great ones, like almost because it's marketing. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
there is this marketing effort pretty much across the boards. And I spoke to a woman this week who's a community activist and a parent in Buffalo, New York. And she brought up a very similar thing, because she has a program in the public schools, and she says 70% of the children in there have all been prescribed some type of drug.
Yeah.
Her program deals with, let's handle the life issues. Let's deal with the, or nutrition. She's very holistic. She's not a trained nutritionist, but her whole orientation is holistic. So it just seems to me very out protocol and out really medical procedure to do this type of thing, to push these things. And a lot of these drugs, that's not what they're even issued for, but they get recommended. Repurposed is the word. Yes, you got it. Repurposed. And the whole thing seems like a very shady operation to me. It's the only way I can describe it.
It is more than shady. I believe it is a definite strategy on the plan of Big Pharma. As a teacher, one of the things that I became appalled at in the last couple of years that I was teaching is that they said that they were coming out with a new assessment to screen the emotional, what is it called? Emotional well-being, or I forget what the wording
emotional
was,
wellness
for our children. Now, on one hand, you would say, oh, wow, this is really good. That we're interested in screening our children to make sure that they're doing well emotionally. However, that is not what's happening here.
Yes.
What's happening, just like when they started out with the screening for quote unquote ADD or quote unquote special needs, right? And then that gave them the ability to go ahead and put some kind of alphabet soup diagnosis on these various children. And then once these children were given that particular diagnosis, now keep in mind that this is the one area, these so-called doctors are the only doctors that can prescribe a medication without doing a single objective test, biological test. All of these screening methodologies are basically checklists. And the dangerous thing about this is that one person's checklist will not be the same as the other person's checklist for the same child. So they would send these little checklists to the teachers, and I refused to complete them because I knew what they were about. So they would send a checklist to the teacher saying, oh, you know what, we're concerned that Johnny is ADD. So will you complete this little checklist for the part of Johnny's assessment? Like I said, I refuse to complete those things. And inevitably, I don't care who you are, when you go into the majority of these people, psychiatric people, you will come out with some kind of diagnosis. I don't care. You could be Mother Teresa, and you will come out. God, Jesus Christ himself could walk into their room, and they would come up with some kind of diagnosis that requires some kind of pill. Okay.
Yes.
So
I believe that.
We have to be on the lookout, because especially now, after what has happened, where we have screwed up our children. Okay.
Yes.
It is not Mother Nature who did this. We did this with the lockdowns, with the masks, with all of the restrictions. No, you can't go see your friend. You know, you got to sit on the computer and do schoolwork on the computer for 6-8 hours. We have created these problems, which is normal, meaning that if a child is depressed, being locked down, that is a normal response.
That's right.
Let's be clear. If a child was exuberant and happy and everything after going through these past 2 years, I would think that was the crazy child, if truth be told. But what we have done is we have made what is normal to be abnormal. When a child loses a parent, when a child loses a dog, I don't know if you remember that old commercial where the kid lost the dog or something like that and was sad. And they're like, oh, you need blah, blah pill. I'm like, for a normal emotion? When did we make normal emotions some kind of medical issue?
For sure.
There's that level of it. And then what I tell parents, because we designed a program called Heartfully Intelligent Kids, and we talk about the 5 heart hacks. And one of the heart hacks, like I said, is teaching children how to be resilient with their emotions. There's nothing wrong with being angry. There's nothing wrong with being sad and depressed. Nothing at all wrong with it. What's wrong, or should I say what's unhealthy or what is dangerous, is if you don't know how to shift. And taking a pill is not teaching you how to shift, how to be resilient. Taking a pill is not teaching you how to let go of an emotion, how to recognize that emotion is a temporary state, or it can be. You can choose to make it a temporary state. There's certain things you can do with movement. There's certain things you can do with breath work. There's certain things you can do with visualization. There's certain things you can do with sound. There's certain things you can do with touch, with massage, that can help you to shift from one emotional state to another. That is empowering. And that is what we need to be teaching our children. So there's that aspect of it. And then what I tell parents is that there are other physiological things that need to be considered. Because, for instance, when we've had our children masked up, guess what? That was shifting their metabolic underpinnings, making their bodies more acidic, increasing the level of carbon dioxide in their body, physically shifting their body from being in a parasympathetic mode into a sympathetic mode, where you're activating that part of the nervous system that is anxious, that is like, kind of thing. Or some people will interpret that in a more depressed mode. So when people are presented with something that is scary or fearful or overwhelming, there is that tendency to either freeze or get anxious or get depressed. Different people respond in different ways to the same type of stimuli. So what we have to do is look at that reality, that there's a physical shift that has occurred in the body. And that physical shift leads to certain depletions in the body. So like Dr. Sutton was saying, that will start to lead to inflammation. That will start to lead to oxidative stress. When those things occur, then you have depletions of certain key minerals like zinc and magnesium. You have depletion of certain key elements like glutathione, and that creates a significant physical change that needs to be addressed. So we encourage parents to consider lab tests, not best guess. And then you can also start looking at, how has this affected the gut biome? You know, what was Johnny eating while he was at home because he couldn't go to school and play with his friends? So he was sitting at the Nintendo. Well, they don't do Nintendo. I don't even know what the games are in this generation. But they were in front of the computer, eating cheese doodles, doing their part for their community by eating takeout or McDonald's or whatever the heck they were eating, and then not having any physical activity, totally disrupting the gut biome, not only with the stress itself, but with the quote unquote food intake, because it's not even food, it's just consumables, you know. So that creates upheaval in the gut biome. Then that creates upheaval in the neurotransmitters. So when they start talking about, oh, well, you know, there's an imbalance in the dopamine with the child, imbalance in the serotonin, or imbalance in GABA, which medication is the one that they choose to address whatever imbalance they choose to identify, is based on imbalances in the neurotransmitters, but those neurotransmitters are produced for the most part in the gut. And if you have an unhealthy gut, then it's natural to understand that you're going to have unhealthy levels of neurotransmitters. And then you have dysregulation of blood sugar. You have hormonal dysregulation. All kinds of things are creating what is manifesting in our children as mental illness, the depression, the anxiety, the schizophrenia, all of these things. And now they're going to come out with these little subjective tools and say, yes, I think Johnny is depressed. So, we're going to put him on blah, blah medication. That has done nothing to address the underlying issues. And unfortunately, that is exactly their intention, which is to make every single person dependent upon some kind of medication. In fact, a multitude of medications. So they're screwing up with our immune system to the point where we're going to need medications to have just ordinary immune function. They're screwing up with our brains and making our brains imbalanced. So our brains weren't imbalanced before. Let's get it clear. Those medications are creating the imbalance. They're not fixing an imbalance, because whatever symptoms you're manifesting is normal, is the body's way of saying there's something wrong. But you're going to go in and create and give a medication that is going to create an imbalance, because it's not addressing the underlying issues. And in fact, it's making it more exacerbated. So that's my take on the matter.
That's fabulous. I think the lab tests are a very good idea. Obviously, it would be great if it could be mandated that these kids, many years ago, I did an investigation at a Ritalin clinic, and I interviewed all the parents to find out how many where the children had actually had a medical exam and they had not. And I was able to get that clinic closed down on that basis. But that was on a very limited basis. If we could obviously do that, but we can get a parent's groundswell going where they demand and say, no, I want lab tests. I think that's brilliant. I want to know what's really going on. And they're not just immediately saying, well, yeah, you're the experts. We got to get rid of that mindset.
We definitely have to get into that mindset of making sure that we are empowering our parents to be advocates for our children. And so one of the first hard hat is for our parents to recognize that our children are not a problem. Our children are gifts. Whatever symptomatic profile they're presenting is a gift. That is God talking to you, saying something needs to change. And the irony when I work with parents in this particular situation is whenever we make an adjustment in the kids' protocol, I say to the parents, you have to make that adjustment too. So if Johnny can't eat ding-dongs and ho-hos, then you can't eat ding-dongs and ho-hos either. If Johnny can't have gluten, then you can't have gluten either. And guess what? When the whole family does this, or when the parents do this with the child in question, the parents benefit. And I really believe that God uses our kids to give us certain messages, because, there are a lot of changes that we don't make for ourselves. But if it's a matter of helping our child, we'll make real changes. So like when I found out my daughter was diabetic, I had to clamp down on a lot of the stuff that I was doing. Now, granted, I don't eat the ding-dongs and ho-hos, but I was eating too much of your carbs, or, even though they were healthy carbs, I was eating too much of, too many fruits and things of that nature. So when I found out what was going on with my daughter, I had to make certain shifts for myself, because I couldn't exactly expect my daughter to change her diet. And I'm sitting in front of her eating the very thing that she can't eat, right? Yeah. And so I benefited. My health got better from doing those things. So God allowed her to be the messenger to help me to improve my health and well-being. And I truly believe that our children, our special needs children, are gifts to us if we would listen. and if we would pay heed to the message that they were brought to teach us, whether it be
That's
the
great.
autistic child that teaches us the importance of touch, the importance of nurturing, or it is the child who is, extra exuberant that teaches us about the gift of patience. They are all meant to teach us if we allow ourselves to be taught. And when we empower our parents to look at their children as gifts instead of problems, and we give them the resources and tools to help their child to navigate on their specific journey, then everyone benefits. So one of the things that I do is teach parents how to do these assessments, how to look and see what kind of symptoms your child is presenting with and understand what the body is saying, so that you can not only help your child, but in reality, you help yourself when you learn how to interpret all of these different signs and to know how to advocate for your child when you're in the principal's office, when you're in the doctor's office, and to never assume just because they have a PhD or some kind of, gobbledygook after their name, that they know your child better than you.
That's
no,
right.
God gifted your child to you and said that you are the caretaker of your child, not these people who are just getting paid to sit in the office. And as much as they would like to tell you that they know your child better than you do, I would sit here and disagree. But, that's just me from being a teacher in the classroom. And I see how a lot of our parents are intimidated into doing things. I've seen parents who did not want their child to be on certain medications, but they were intimidated into believing that their child could not attend school unless they were on those medications. And parents who were intentionally not given the information that they needed. And sometimes it was also a matter of teaching styles. A child would be one way in one classroom and another way in my classroom because, I just don't play that game. I have kids talking to me, oh, Dr. Gamble, I just got diagnosed with ADHD. I'm like, okay, and your point? That doesn't change anything for me,
Yeah.
So it is about empowering our parents to be stronger advocates and to help them to come together to support each other and to not be intimidated by all of these different titles. You'll notice that throughout COVID, we were told that we're supposed to trust everybody else out there. Ignore whatever it is that God has laid on your heart. You don't know anything. You're too stupid to understand anything. And that is the same kind of message that parents get when they go into the principal's office. Oh, these educators know everything. They know better than you what should be taught to your child. Really? I beg to disagree. Now, I may not know, physics 301, but I know whether or not I want XYZ to be taught to my child because that's what God has placed on my heart.
Of course. I am with you. You had also mentioned for elderly people as well, when they go to the doctor, that they also don't get intimidated. And I think it's sort of across the boards that when someone goes in and is told, oh, are you depressed? And is this happening? And is that happening? And they are hoodwinked. They're just hoodwinked.
Yeah. And
they
we're hoodwinked
don't know how to fight back.
And now we're living in a world where their goal is to make you think that there's something wrong with you.
Yes.
Because that's how they make money. They can't make money off of you if you think that you were divinely created. But if you think you're a screw up, and that God made a mistake, they can make oodles and oodles of money off of you from telling you to either chop off your breasts or get artificial breasts or, take whatever pill to pump you up if you're a guy. They always have to create this illusion that you are wrong.
Yes.
That something is wrong with you. So when your blood pressure goes up, something is wrong with you. No, your system is responding correctly. something is wrong with what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between something being wrong with you and a behavior that you're engaged in.
Sure.
You have the power to change your behavior. And they don't want you to know that.
Yeah. Very good point. Yeah, very good point. Well, I'm going to send you some further information about this whole movement in Buffalo to alert parents and that type of thing. And we'll see what we can do to help back them up.
I would love to learn more about that, and I would love to assist in any way possible. I will send you some information about our Heartfully Intelligent Kids program. And we actually did a summit maybe like 5 years ago. We did an online summit on Heal Your Child. So I will send you the link to that, because that was when I first met Dr. Sutton, because she was one of the speakers on the Heal Your Child Summit panel.
Nice.
So we go back a little ways. Not that I think about it. That was my first adventure with Dr. Sutton. But it is so critical that we recognize that, you know, this is where we are right now, in a world where they are making our children sick, or making them think that they are sick, that all the messages out there are saying you're a screw up, you know. So even now they're getting even dastardly saying, oh, you're not really a boy, you're a girl. And you're not really a girl, you're a boy, or you're fluid. You don't have to be a girl or a boy. And it's like, we're creating psychosis in our children.
That's for sure. No doubt about that.
I tell you. And they want to do it at an age where no child should be thinking about sex before. Of course. I would say not even until you're 18, 16, 17, 18. But they want to put those kinds of conversations into the head of practically a newborn. And they're not capable of processing that kind of data, you know? And that's what's concerning. The reason why our children are so overwhelmed emotionally is because we are putting them in situations that they should not be in. A child should not be in a situation where they have to decide, am I going to kill grandma? Why did we ever start to give that message? If you go and play with your friends, you're going to kill grandma.
Yeah, that's right. Terrible.
So now we're dealing with the consequences, the normal response of the body, the brain, the heart saying, whoa, this is craziness, does not compute. I don't know what to do with this. That's not abnormal. That is the body trying to find its way back home.
Yes.
And for us to put medication into that journey is just going to create more meandering, where we're going to get lost in all of these different detours, because it's going to create other issues. And that's what they don't talk about. The fact that all of these medications cause other things to go offline. If you are talking about a dopamine suppressor or a dopamine, receptor, or SSRI, it is under the premise that you're going to force the body to do something that it doesn't want to do. And that's creating a precedent that is going to be hard to reverse in the long run.
And then there'll be other things prescribed to take care of the side effects and the other side effects.
And those things cause side effects. So it's just this avalanche, unfortunately. And it's sad that our parents are being railroaded into that particular path. And so whatever you can do, whatever I can do, please let me know, because that is a significant area of concern for me. Like I said, I've been on all sides of the equation, from a practitioner to a teacher to a parent. So I'm well versed with all the different viewpoints. Let's put it that way.
Yes, that's really great.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. The woman I'm speaking of, she also had her 23-year-old son who was taking Adderall with all the other workers in a factory just to stay up and get the job done. And then he suddenly stopped and he didn't know about the withdrawal symptoms. So he started feeling really bad, went to a doctor, then was prescribed with 3 other drugs and ended up in an institution and ended up dead. So it was pretty shocking situation, all from the beginning situation of he tried to stay awake during his job. That was the situation he was dealing with.
So we intentionally create abnormal, unhealthy situations that push people into these zones.
That's right.
So we intentionally create illnesses. And then we want to vilify the body, nature, for the response.
That's right.
When nature says, uh-oh, there's something wrong with this program, we say that there's something wrong with nature, as opposed to saying, no, there's something wrong with what I'm doing. There's something wrong with being in this environment. And unfortunately, we also live in a world where we take people's voices away. And that's what we're experiencing now. That is what is happening with our virtuous doctors who are speaking up. They're being penalized speaking up. So Dr. Sutton gets her license taken away because she chooses to advocate for a child that cannot speak for him or herself. That is the wonderful gift that we give to people who fight for those who cannot fight for themselves.
That's right. Well, thank you so much. It's been very enlightening, and I appreciate your perspective and all your experience. It's really very terrific.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us once again for another episode of The Doctors Are In. We encourage you to invite your friends, invite your family, invite your coworkers, anyone who has any questions that they want to ask. And one question that we did not get to that we're going to have to table for next month, which is ED, erectile dysfunction. So I know you're going to show up for that one. It's going to be juicy. All righty.